Hey everyone, welcome to day 5, the last day of Crypto Sports Week. We are here wrapping up the 5th primer designed to provide what was 4 days ago a sense of like the fundamental building blocks. Today is much, much more about when you're go live, go ready, what do you need to do or be thinking about to have a successful NFT drop. So to guide the conversation, we're going to get right into it. I'm going to share some slides. I am joined by Lady Pheonix. We'll do intros here in a second. But what we really want to make sure that we do is provide a sense of context before we get into the content. And so as mentioned, Crypto Sports Week is about the sports community and the crypto community coming into formation as this new emerging economy, community, and certainly a landscape that's going to be as broad as our imagination kicks in. Lady Pheonix, a digital and crypto native. Me as founder of Round 21, a brand at the intersection of art and sport. Greg, who sits at the intersection of events and community as founder of Expo Boulevard. And Dylan, a creative wizard who owns and has founded Non Company and has been the creative lens throughout all of the Crypto Sports Week and Crypto Fashion Weeks that you guys have seen before, have brought this event together. We're kicking in with this idea of an NFT drop by first reminding the sports community that just like everything else in sports, NFTs are more than just revenue. When you look at this kind of cross-section, this mood board of what sports moments have represented, it's always been about emotion, a shared community, a sense of nostalgia. And I just wanted to make sure that even when you're thinking about entering the NFT space, you think about some of the fundamentals in sports and how that is exactly where you should be thinking about starting within this new space. And that's a huge asset. But the reason we're talking about NFTs and the drop success is because it is big, big business. If you land a community, a narrative, a utility, some of the things Lady Pheonix is going to go into, there is a tremendous amount of revenue potential, but this cannot be your objective day one. And so, Lady Pheonix, thank you so much for joining and taking time to really break down the fundamentals. You've been a part of so many successful drops. If you can't, if you can, maybe first start by speaking through the lens of some of the drops that you've been a part of. The sports community may not know kind of the shoulders you've rubbed and how you've been a steward for some of the drops that have definitely captured a lot of headlines.
Yeah, thanks, Jasmine. I don't really think of myself as a digital and crypto native. I just wanted to kind of address that. I think of myself more as I'm a curator and an artist. Universe Contemporary is the premier consultancy in the space for art and crypto media at large. And so because of that, we get the opportunity to work on a number of drops, from music to sports to fashion to art, of course. And so our very first drop was back in December 2020 with Deadmau5 and an artist called Sutu, who is the premier, a preeminent artist in the VR, XR, AR space. This guy's worked on many of the Marvel movies that you know and love. He's worked on Ready Player One. It's probably, arguably considered the #1 VR artist, certainly in the world. He is co-founder of an AR company called iJack, who works on the biggest concerts. He also worked at The Wave. The Wave, when the world shut down, The Wave got really busy doing concerts for folks. They did ones with TikTok, and so a lot of the concerts from The Weeknd, Alice in Wonderland, and John Legend, a lot of those concerts were done virtually, and Sutu was the artist and director behind a lot of those concerts. So you team a guy up like that with someone like Deadmau5, and you do an audio reactive drop, and you have magic. Yeah.
Awesome. So that was the first one. And so from there, you've obviously been part of, both from a strategic perspective, but also on the front lines as drops are happening, this kind of cross-section, these 6 characteristics of a successful drop. And I'm sure there are so many more. from the perspective of taking advantage of a great strategy, great content, some of the primers from before today, building a smart contract that is reflective of the intent of the NFT drop, what are some of the things you can speak to from a practical application around community? Let's start there. We hear that a lot within the NFT space, that community is critical and core. From an NFT drop perspective, what are some of the fundamentals that you think somebody should be thinking about related to community before they do their drop?
I think they should think about their online community. Who are the people online that you have, um, that you've supported, right? Who are some of the people online that you actually speak to? So I think, because this is essentially an internet product, you need to be considering your internet community. A lot of what happens online. So I think it's important to make sure that, again, you don't need 40, 50, 100,000 followers. You don't need to be verified. I mean, it would be great if you had at least 10,000, followers, but even if you don't, that doesn't matter either. How strong is your online community and network? And how wonderful are you at supporting other people online? It's hard to expect others to support you when you haven't gone out of your way or made any efforts to support other people.
Very well said. And very common in offline communities prior to the internet, I would say, the neighborhood, the society, and the community you kept in the physical world, those were the people when you ran out of sugar, you wanted to go and borrow from. There's a lot of transferability now in the digital world. And I think because of things like whether it's Facebook advertising or bots, that people think that they can apply technology to build the community or get the community aware. But what I'm hearing from you is no, it's going back to peer-to-peer, person-to-person value exchange. And that has to be a groundwork that's been set prior to the NFT drop.
Yeah, bots are a really bad idea. Don't do bots, don't buy followers. Actually take time to build community online, specifically within the NFT space. A lot of folks are on Twitter, they're on Discord, they're on Telegram, and of course, they're on Clubhouse. So take the time to build community in those four spaces. And, I think you'll see a strong ROI when you get ready for your drop. At the very least, people will show up and say nice things about you. And so maybe that'll be your first drop where, you've got a few people who show up and say nice things about you. But then consider, also if you want to build community straight away, consider collaborating with other artists. Right now, that way, you have an automatic in to someone else's community, and they have an automatic in to your community. Think about it sort of like in the Game of Thrones days, where two families would marry each other, right? For protection, for status, for whatever it was. They were coming together for a specific purpose. So if you're a great artist, but you just don't have a following online, consider lending your great art style to someone who's super popular, but their art or their expression may be varied from yours in a way where you can leverage your excellence um, to their style, but mostly, to their community. And you can become known. So Clubhouse, once again, as a social networking platform, is a super easy place to become known and network with folks. If you're like, I can't collaborate and I don't really know, anybody that I can lend my genius to and my art to. Okay, fine. Go on Clubhouse, go on like a big room, listen to the conversation, listen for ways you can add value, get yourself up there on stage, say something in a way that contributes to other people, and be looking for the ways to deliver value. Don't go up there asking, hey, can we collaborate? Hey, I don't have a network. Hey, my NFT drops tomorrow. Can you buy my shit? Don't say any of those things. Listen to the conversation and look for ways you can provide value. If you start looking for ways you can provide value, you'll build community lightning fast.
I hear an underpinning of the word patience as you're speaking about this too, in the sense of being conscious that this is about true value and not necessarily transaction. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time. So going into utility, actually, I think utility and value for users may be both, maybe interchangeable, but definitely are connected. when people are thinking about their NFT drop and they understand their community, let's say they're a sports team and they know their season ticket holders and their super fans, and then the followers on all the platforms are there and they know that they're rabid and maybe there's some pent up demand. How should the idea of utility and the value that's kind of sold and built into the transaction be a part of the strategy for the drop?
Can you ask me that question in another way?
Sure. So if, for example, let's take the Golden State Warriors, they're an NBA team that dropped NFTs. Something that was built within their NFT drop was some signaling that the NFT owners would get maybe, yes, this beautiful digital asset, but also access or opportunities to engage with the players and the team long term. I think of that as utility. So as part of the NFT drop itself, whether it's built into the NFT itself or the narrative of the drop, how should somebody who's about to think, who's thinking about dropping an NFT build utility and the value for users into the narrative and actually into their drop strategy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that utility question comes in after they've done a few drops. I think most people should just get used to dropping, right? So maybe say you've done at least 3 drops now and you feel stoked. You want to build utility into what you're doing. Yeah, this is a big debate because what is utility and value for you might be a little bit different from someone else, right? And so I would say back this kind of for me goes back to your community and your collector base. Who are your collectors and what do they want from art? And then think about what you want from art and then base your utility in that.
Yeah, I remember when Micah Johnson on Tuesday or Wednesday maybe was up on stage talking about Aku and how he had said, even in his Discord, and this is how everything we're talking about is kind of interwoven and interdependent, the community he has on Discord, he said, my Discord is open, but for the NFT holders, there are a couple of channels that are gated where they get to have time with us and help brainstorm in a certain way. And it got me thinking about whether it's an athlete or a league even providing, for example, if there's an athlete and he said, hey, anybody who owns my NFT, post game. So I'll do my post game with the team. I'll do my post game with a media outlet, but post game, join my Discord. And for anyone who owns my NFT, we'll sit and chat as I'm cooling down and, icing my knees about what I saw in the game. I think even that type of very athlete specific or sports specific concept of utility is really an open avenue for anybody making their drop. But what I'm hearing from you is sometimes just getting the idea of the brand in the space out first and not maybe feeling like you have to have everything figured out from day one is okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult to try to pack too many things, into the NFT experience, into your drop. I think sometimes it's important to use, your very first drop as a way of building community, right? Like if you're dropping your first NFT, even if you're, Sue Bird or Megan Rapinoe, you don't have to have a utility that points to, post anything. If you've joined the community, welcome. That's utility. The utility is the welcome party. You showing up on Clubhouse, maybe you showing up on a YouTube and talking about the drop. I think that you said earlier to have patience. It's super important. Um, people do their first drop and they want to have a Lamborghini experience on their first drop. It's okay to have a Honda experience on your first drop. So I really encourage folks to go at their own speed. If your speed is Honda speed, it's okay. If your speed is bicycle speed, it's okay. If your speed is I've got 2 feet and I'm walking and I'm happy, it's okay. Keep walking and be happy. Walk with a little pep in your step, meaning when you do your first drop, it doesn't have to be the biggest, craziest splash on the world. Maybe you've connected with one person on Twitter and you can arrange to sell your work to them privately. They like your work. You've been posting Instagram, you've been posting on Twitter. They've heard you speaking in rooms and adding value. And they reach out to you in DMs and say, "Hey, I really love your work. What platform are you selling on?" Maybe you haven't sold on any platforms yet. Maybe that person then says, "I would love to buy your work as soon as you start selling." Then you open your account on Zora or OpenSea or wherever it is you're going to do your drop. This is what I mean. It doesn't have to be you go on Clubhouse, you just crazy drop party with like 2,000 people in the room. It's okay to start walking with pep in your step. Maybe that's how you first come out. After you made that first drop, you start building more relationships, building more community. Then you can think about certain utilities like Aku, for example, with one of the drops that Micah is considering to do with Aku. He and I have discussed, like, oh, well, maybe, the person who purchases this NFT will get to appear in the movie. And so the owner of the owner of the NFT utility there would be you get to become a character in this NFT and you have a small appearance in the movie because Aku is the first NFT to become a movie. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
you go ahead, please.
I was going to say, what is next?
What
This
is
slide,
next? Well, I was
yeah.
going to build one more example of what you just said, because I think it's really disarming to hear that you don't have to have everything figured out. And similarly, for anybody, if it's worth it, I did a Kickstarter for Round 21 in December, and one of the rewards was you get to collaborate on a ping pong paddle collection. So there's a lot of similarities with core business tactics that it sounds like could be applied in the NFT space that just from a relevance perspective, you can think through, but it sounds like you don't have to put what I would call the kitchen sink into your first NFT, and that having a sense of drop, learn, adapt, kind of progress over time is absolutely acceptable. I think in the sports industry, we're so competitive, and there's always the sense of like either being first, being on top, being biggest, where I have heard a narrative that without those characteristics, it won't feel like a success. And I think that is where this is being seen as a moment instead of a movement or like the groundwork for a future economy. Like the same way that people definitely within kind of the community that NFTs I think has created have been talking about, this is like the very beginning of the internet. There's not going to be one winner. This is about a landscape that all of us should be able to play in, and kind of repositioning this in that way versus being first or being biggest or being best. Next is in terms of the NFT drop, maybe this should have gone first, but story. And so, on day one of the primer, we showcased a variety of different examples, case studies of NFTs within the sports landscape, and some of the things that come to mind, including, because NFTs aren't just for the audience, digital assets in like a trading card format. You could think of Zed Run as an NFT platform, which, last night was a great interactive on how NFTs and ownership of that can provide value and utility in a variety of ways, but it's built within the Zed Run ecosystem. Or we've mentioned Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird's drops, those NFTs, or Trevor Lawrence's. They all have their own unique narrative and story, and they all have a unique approach to the drop as well. Just pulling out Zed Run yesterday, honestly, the first three characteristics, check. The Zed Run YouTube stream last night was rampant, just so active in the chat. The community was really like excited about the utility. When is breeding coming out? How can I do this and that? And then they were asking for new drops. Like that type of pent up demand is an incredible position for Zed now to leverage into building greater value for their community. But it wasn't on the first drop. It took time to build, almost like a staircase. From the perspective of story, Lady Pheonix, when you think about some of the drops that you've been a part of outside of sports and how the narrative is very important and certainly can be built in terms of the NFT, but also in terms of how it is dropped. What are some examples of how story is important to having a successful NFT drop?
Yeah, I think like a really good narrative for story would be, so to invite all of these kinds of aspects that you're talking about. Again, I brought it up last time, but I would look at somebody, Mad Dog Jones, right? So Jasmine, can you pull up Replicator?
I will try.
Mad Dog
Stand by.
Jones,
You got
yeah.
it. Yeah, let's stop sharing here. Okay, while I do that. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if you look at Replicator, Mad Dog Jones, there's an automatic story built into, you know, to what he does, right? So there's a story built into the NFT itself, but then there's a narrative or story built into the person's practice, right? Who they are as a person, but also who they are as an artist. So I think it's important to think about narrative on three levels, right? You want to think about narrative on the level of the work, how the work performs, right? That story. You want to think about narrative in regards to your practice. Like, let's talk about your art. Are you good at talking about your art practice? Who you are, who you've been as an artist, and then about your personal narrative, your life story. All three of those things have to come together in order to make a successful drop. Often, when one or two of those elements are missing, it's a less successful drop. Unless, of course, you have an incredible community who is just like, hey, dude, I'm going to buy your shit, right? If you don't have someone who, or a group of someone's who's just going to buy your stuff and hype you up no matter what, then you really need to tap in with the narrative. You must have a strong narrative. Specifically, you need a strong personal narrative. So you're like, Lady Pheonix, I've been practicing art for about 2 days now. I'm a brand new artist and I don't really have like strong context and strong, a strong practice. Okay, well, you better have a very strong personal narrative so that people understand when they purchase that NFT, they're actually purchasing a portion or a piece of your personal story and they're investing in who you are, right? By listening to your personal story and thus investing in the growth and trajectory of your art practice.
Yeah. So this example, Replicator, do you want to speak to how that is a good example for those who may not know?
Yeah, so the story of Replicator is that the NFT itself can both breed new NFTs and then also die. He was inspired by the show The Office, which is a cult classic film. So, I won't get too deep into that. Folks can go and read more about that for themselves. But already, a function of the NFT that can both breed new NFTs and also destroy NFTs is amazing. And then to be drawing inspiration from a film that was a cult classic or is a cult classic is pretty brilliant because now you have a pop culture reference through which you can anchor parts of the narrative in. It's fantastic.
Yep. Great example. Okay. So getting back at it, I think we have about 20 minutes, 10 minutes. Yep, about 10 minutes left. So then you have a great story, you have a community, you have thought about utility and whether you're building it into this or not. And you've decided that, let's say, May 20th is your drop. How should one think about building anticipation? I think a lot about the Animus drop as a great example personally. And then how should one think about more of a conventional or traditional use of earned media like press to help generate awareness and within their own network, whether it's like influencers to help get the word out as well, just from a marketing perspective? Any thoughts on guiding the sports community on what to think about at that point?
Sure, I'd love to hear your Animus example, though. I think
Yeah.
JN and Rio and that crew did it's an exceptional job, and I'd love to hear sort of your takeaways on that.
Yeah, so I am a big fan of Jan Silva and was very lucky actually last year that he took some time and was talking to me about how he had dedicated the past 2 to 3 years within this space. And so I feel like I knew where his head was at, call it 6, 8 months ago, but am absolutely blown away by about how he has made a very, I think, iconic trajectory of where Jan Silva's legacy is going to be in this space with his own sense of collaborations. Lady Pheonix, as you mentioned early on with Thank You X and Ryan, and then what I feel like his role was here, but particularly related to building anticipation through already the building blocks of having a great story as well as a sense of community. This drop that happened just a few weeks ago, and if you want to almost like follow along or see it, Made by Animus on Instagram to me is the best example of just dripping content. Obviously, there was a sense of collaboration in partnership with DJ Premier. There was also a sense of nostalgia and almost like a tribute tone to this, which I think in sports is very impactful because obviously technology can be intimidating for a lot of people, but when you keep it rooted within the story of the asset or the icon or the collaborator or partner has done incredible things. This was a teaser that helped set a path forward. And so this was, looks like 2 weeks before the drop. And then they continued to kind of drip a sense of humanity, personality, giving people who may have only been crypto native and had been following maybe some of the creators who were behind this, giving a sense of who DJ Premier is, why his legacy was being represented this way, and a human interest aspect to it, I thought was really great. And that's a little bit closer to the drop. And then, from there, it's honestly like not unlike a traditional marketing campaign, which is different dimensions of the drop kind of coming to life. And then they started to get a little bit more specific about what they were releasing and the people behind it. And to me, what was great about this 2 days before was now these people are kind of revealed, and now they can pump their audience that they're a part of this. And if you notice, like to Lady Pheonix's earlier point, like Made by Animus on its own didn't have a lot of followers, but they were able to leverage the feeling of all of these other collaborators and kind of icons in their own communities coming together, which pools anticipation. And what I loved by this is no one sat kind of back and felt like, well, we can just rely on DJ Premier's audience to show up. So then they focus on like a day before all of and here's where we added a layer of gamification. And it felt like if you had been a part of this journey of learning and listening and leaning in, that you were being pulled in more and more about now what is the quote product that they are dropping and why does it have value? And they built in the sense of treasure hunt. One of these has got to be the AR experience that they did. Well, I don't see it, but they also did an AR experience, I believe, in Brooklyn, where with your phone, it unlocked kind of a sense of 3D animation related to what are the traditional kind of, what are they called? Post-no bills, on walls throughout a city. And so what was great about this
pasting.
Thank you. And then everything else is kind of since the drop, but that's kind of what I was referring to as a great use of some of the characteristics we've already talked about, but within one single drop. Anything else to add related to anticipation or validation?
Well, I like those slides. What else do you have? What's after this?
Oh, well, I was just going to use it's just some other examples, which we covered on Monday, but we covered it on Monday as just like, here's the landscape. We didn't actually go into them as specific quote drops, but Zed Run dropped their Terra drop last week. And I can speak to this one, Lady Fee, if you want me to, and then we have 3 or 4 more.
Yeah, I think we should just kind of like cycle through the slides. I like really quickly how you added the drip method. I think that's super important. And then even if you're like, oh snap, I didn't, you're listening now and you're like, oh snap, you know, I plan to drop my NFT in 2 days. I haven't done a drip method. That's fine. Just do a preview video, right? And then definitely do a video of you talking about your practice. A great person to reference for that is a gentleman called Alberto Mielgo. He put out a really great video about his practice, about his art, about himself, that made anyone who didn't know him very familiar with who he is and what he does. It's a brilliant example rather, of how to make a audience that doesn't know you familiar with who you are, your narrative, your personal narrative, and the narrative of your practice and your work. And then, of course, you want to, you want to make a video that's like a trailer for your work. You don't necessarily have to like release the entire thing, but you do want to have a teaser video, right? And in the teaser video, make sure you have the date, the time, and the platform that your work is dropping on.
Yep. Fundamentals that sometimes get overlooked without
They often get overlooked.
Yeah. Out in the favor of hype.
That's right.
Yeah. So Zed, we've spoken about them a few times, but they have now a community. They've been in the market just a few short months, but they harness that like anticipation that their community is really already asking for. Hey, when are we going to? Hey, what about? Hey, what if? And they dropped an NFT a new collection of assets last week. And it was a very simple social and email post, but it was because they were leveraging their built-in community. And it sold out very, very quickly. And yesterday's interactive at 8 p.m. was evidence that they are now have more and more anticipation, which is just a great position for them to be in. The next is Top Shot. We don't need to spend too much time here, but as somebody who bought one of my first packs in September or October, and it was, $12.99 and no hype, no line, and now to see where they're at, this is clearly a platform that is rooted in the nostalgia, the fandom, and certainly a sense of kind of the collectible culture that sports has benefited from for decades and decades now in the form of digital assets. And so they have the ability, and they clearly do, to drop packs at will that provides them the ability to have a sense of anticipation actually built into their business model, not unlike, the hype train of Nike sneaker drops.
I'm wondering, Jasmine, if the pack you bought at $1,200.
$12.
Oh, $12.
$12.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has it increased in value?
So arguably, yes. I haven't actually gone in. So I'm a non-traditional collector in the sense that I do it just for the pure fun of it. I don't think of these as assets that need to appreciate over time, but yes, they have, only because of scarcity. But unlike, I'd say, almost every other, I'm the little outlier that no one talks about in like the meetings, who doesn't, really care. I have one Aaron Gordon play that has a value behind it. Everything else is pretty common. But it has appreciated because it's a very simple economic dynamic of supply and demand, and the value of the players appreciating in their own way as their legacy grows, and also as people are making their own collections. If someone's missing one of them that I have, which is very likely because of how limited the Top Shot assets are right now, then of course they would have appreciated. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to say with NFTs, part of your drop strategy, you need to be thinking about the secondary market and how your work will appreciate. It's great to hear that your NBA Top Shot card has appreciated in value. That certainly isn't the case for everyone. Whether it be NBA Top Shot, specifically, I'm not saying that one, but just NFTs in general, sometimes, especially on the hype train, some of these platforms, they'll be selling, thousands of editions, and you'll buy your edition at $1,200, and a few months later on the secondary market, that edition, or that NFT that you purchase is worth $250. So just
Well,
really consider the NFT. Perhaps consider if that NFT is going to age well. So this is two sides. When you're making your NFT, really consider if the content, or the artwork, if that particular subject matter or aesthetic, or content in general will age well. I don't think people consider that when they drop their NFT, and it's super hyped up right then, right now. But there's nothing worse than buying an NFT at market price on the primary market and having it age horribly, like avocados in the summertime, sitting out on the table at the hottest day of the year, right? That becomes your NFT, and on the secondary market, it's not even worth half of what people paid for it. Folks will be very hesitant to buy another NFT from you, specifically at a certain price in the market, if your NFTs are aging poorly. I knew one person where so again, with drop strategy too, I would at the very least put 21 days between each drop. I know a person, he did not, he didn't have a well thought out plan. He was trying to drop NFTs every week. It got to the point where, and it was all different type of platforms. Got to the point where he was trying to drop an NFT on each platform every single week. It was literally crazy. And people would tell him, hey, dude, slow down, focus on one platform, just focus on maybe once a month. Like, you don't need to get out there and go crazy with the drops. And he didn't listen to anybody. Collectors literally put all his NFTs up, and the ones that they couldn't sell because no one wanted them on the secondary market, collectors basically burned those tokens.
wow.
That's bad. Okay, so
Yeah.
as you're considering your drop strategy, be be strategic in, again, the type of content that you're putting out so that it ages well. Make sure that you're someone in the community that, again, you're adding value, because something else that can affect your drops, right, and affect the value of your NFT, unfortunately, is who you are in the community. Are you a nice guy? Are you someone who adds value? Are you someone who's chill? Are you always in the comment section being aggressive? Are you always on NFT talking crazy, or on Clubhouse in the NFT rooms talking crazy to people, right? So there's a lot that goes into a drop. That's not just, hey, my art is cool,
Yeah.
right? So just be aware that all of these things are really collateral. Also be aware of the tempo and the speed by which you're dropping these NFTs. Again, you want to leave 21 days between each drop. If you want to drop often, at least leave yourself 21 days.
Well, I'll speak from firsthand experience around the Bored Ape Club. As you were just mentioning, asset appreciation, et cetera. So I did invest in a Bored Ape, and I did that not very different than the NBA Top Shot. I did that to see if I could acquire an asset that would appreciate. And I was disappointed, actually, that the community started to create derivatives and also build their own derivative Bored Ape platform NFTs. Coming from business and marketing, I know how that commoditization of an asset affects the value. And so we'll see where, this industry, or the sense of like where Bored Apes are going to goes. But I think there's also a rational position that the collector community needs to take around appreciating the asset for what it is. Very similar to the way CryptoPunks and now the Meebits are. They are celebrated as very unique and not kind of derivative able, in a sense. And people celebrate having that one of one, or a sense of like ownership for that I think will continue to maintain the value as it appreciates over time. Whereas the weekend and the week to follow for Bored Ape had a very different tone, which was a lot of fun. But I think from an asset perspective, potentially commoditize the value. We'll see. Moving through, so the Golden State Warriors, we talked about this earlier, but certainly from a drop party perspective, you know, I mentioned this on the primer from the first day, but the clubhouse that they hosted, I thought was very telling about how they were looking at this from a long-term perspective, because they didn't have the marketing team or like all the players. It felt very distinctly different than the Gronk launch, where he showed up. They, you know, talked a lot about this being a moment. He wants to be first. They're having a lot of fun with it. This was the president of the organization, a player, and David from the venture team. And there was a sense of, this is meaningful to us. This is meaningful to our fans. This is, you know, what we're doing today. We'll continue to participate if it makes sense. But it felt like it was a very considered drop, as well as they actively, you know, mentioned that they sit in the belly of Silicon Valley. And so they didn't just show up one day and decide to do this, that they've been kind of turned on to crypto for 4 or 5 years. And certainly we're thinking about the NFT space last year before doing this year. So I thought that was an important narrative that they brought to their drop party, which I think played out in how well received it was by their fans. And then the Trevor Lawrence drop, I thought this was a good example of context. So Trevor Lawrence, #1 draft pick in the NFL draft, Adidas kind of co-signing this drop on Bitsky, where Trevor Lawrence, with a story around being first pick since day one, reinforced that cultural moment, those 3 or 4 days around the draft, and that Trevor specifically wanted to make sure the net proceeds went to a charitable fund that he is highly invested in. It also was very authentic, since Trevor Lawrence's first kind of media announcement after or going into the draft was around his investment in Blockfolio. So it all had kind of the signals of, this is relevant, this is authentic, because it was the #1 draft pick and the story was about being draft pick since day one, as well as kind of him as a person being interested in the space. And I think that's it. I mean, we've spent 40 to 50 minutes, let's see what time it is, 45 minutes breaking down what we think are the key fundamentals of having a successful NFT drop. They were community, utility, thinking about value for the users, obviously having an incredible story rooted in this new kind of experience or connection you're building with your community, and then making sure that you don't just show up one day and drop something, but build some anticipation through your community and leverage any external validation related to press or organizations that you're part of. And that wraps up our last Crypto Sports Week primer. Lady Pheonix, I would love for you to just speak about, you know, the week very high level and how this kind of is the 5th of 5 days of education. And then I'll bring us home on what's next in our schedule today.
Yeah. Well, if you've been paying attention, guys, and you've been with us from day one, we essentially took you through how to get into the community, how to choose a platform, like how to be thinking about smart contracts. Again, smart contracts, you know, at their very root are a set of instructions, right? Written in software, written in code. And so it's not just that, though, right? They have a performance aspect. So be thinking about that. I can't go through each of the days, Jasmine, because I honestly don't remember what we spoke
really,
about each day.
Opening a wallet was the only other one. And then today.
Yep. Yeah. So opening your wallet, and then today. When you choose your wallet, there are a lot of great options. The option that I found that works fantastic for me because of the things that I want to do with my wallets, for example, I prefer Portis over MetaMask. MetaMask, you have to download stuff. You have to, you know, be using it from that specific computer that you've downloaded. And for me, I like being able to have a web-based wallet that I can access anytime. More specifically, I love having a wallet where it's 1 or 2 clicks and there you go, you've made your purchase. And more importantly for me, I love having a wallet where I can actually look at my NFT collection from my wallet without having to go to OpenSea to look at my collection. So that's super important for me. I love the utility of Portis. It's portis.io. You guys can go and check it out. And then today's, last day, day 5, discussing sort of drop mechanics. And yeah, don't worry if you're just tuning in and it's the last few minutes of this conversation. All of this information is saved online on YouTube, so you can go back and reference them at universecontemporary.com/YouTube and find all of these episodes.
Awesome. And that is it for me as well, founder of Round 21, a brand at the intersection of art and sports, wherever our community wants us to be in real life and in the metaverse. We are taking this primer and going right into a 1 o'clock live on Clubhouse with 3 leaders of different aspects of the idea of capturing sports moments while they happen. Just one of the most incredible and revered photographers in all of sports. Walter Yos is going to join us. He is well known for capturing some of the most iconic images in sports. Sade Pratt, a professional soccer player and artist, will talk about capturing sports from her perspective as an athlete who's an artist. And then Fan Zone, a new kid on the block that's building trading cards in the digital world out of Europe, who's going to talk about both soccer fandom, but also this new way of collecting. That takes us to 4 o'clock with a session on Clubhouse with the investment community right at the intersection of sports and tech. And then at 6 o'clock, we're going to spend about 30 minutes with the founders of Crypto Sports Week, talking about how this all came about, what it meant to us, and what's next. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. And until then, we'll see you later.